The great hall of the Imperial Senate stretched for nearly a kilometer under a dome of pure crystal. Thousands of alien beings filled the floating platforms that circled the central speaking chamber. Their voices created a low buzz that echoed through the vast space like the sound of angry insects. Ambassador Kexathul walked to the center of the hall. His 6 legs clicked against the metal floor as his forearms gestured to the holographic display that appeared above his head. The image showed a small yellow star with several planets orbiting around it. One of the planets was blue and green, covered with swirling white clouds. "Honored Senate," Kexthul began, his voice carrying easily through the hall's amplification system. "I present my report on the species discovered in what they call the Sol System." A wave of amused chittering swept through the assembled aliens. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Another primitive world to add to our collection." Kexthul's mandibles clicked in what passed for a smile among his species. "Indeed, Senators. These creatures call themselves humans. They are bipedal mammals, mostly hairless, with only a single head and 2 arms. Their technology is laughably primitive." The hologram changed to show images of human cities, spacecraft, and military equipment. More laughter erupted from the crowd as they saw Earth's primitive rockets and chemical-powered ships. "They still burn fuel to achieve thrust," Kexathul continued. "Their fastest ships take months to travel between planets in their own system. They have established only a few small colonies on nearby worlds. Most of their population remains trapped on their birth planet." Emperor Vexnari sat on his floating throne at the highest point of the dome. His massive form was covered in scales that shifted color with his mood. Right now they showed the deep purple of amusement. His voice boomed across the hall when he spoke. "How many ships do they possess?" the Emperor asked. "Approximately 12,000 vessels of various sizes, Your Majesty. Most are cargo ships or small patrol craft. They have perhaps 300 ships that could be considered military vessels, though they would barely qualify as shuttles by our standards." The laughter grew louder. Senator Yixamol, representing the warrior caste, stood on her platform. Her insect-like appearance made her voice sound like buzzing when she spoke. "Your Majesty, a single destroyer from our fleet could easily defeat their entire military. Why are we even discussing these primitives?" Emperor Vexnari's scales shifted to bright orange, showing his pleasure. "Because, dear Senator, every species must be catalogued before we decide their fate. Some are worthy of joining our empire as servants, others—" He paused, letting the threat hang in the air. "Others provide entertainment for our arena worlds." Kexthul activated another section of his report. "The humans are divided into nearly 200 separate governments. They cannot even unite their own species, much less pose any threat to the empire. They fight among themselves using projectile weapons and explosive devices. Their largest weapons can destroy cities, but they lack any technology that could threaten even our smallest ships." "What of their culture?" asked Senator Zalthor, who specialized in analyzing conquered species. "Are they suitable for labor?" "They show remarkable endurance and adaptability," Kexthul replied. "They can survive in various environmental conditions and seem capable of learning complex tasks. However, they display disturbing tendencies toward independence and rebellion. They may require significant conditioning before they accept their proper place in the Imperial Order." The Emperor leaned forward on his throne. "Show us their military capabilities." The hologram displayed footage of human armies, navies, and air forces. The aliens watched human soldiers marching, tanks rolling across battlefields, and fighter jets streaking through the sky. The display caused another wave of amused sounds from the crowd. "Note their reliance on kinetic weapons," Kexthul pointed out. "They still fire metal projectiles at each other. Their most advanced energy weapons are simple lasers that can barely cut through metal. They have no plasma technology, no quantum weaponry, no gravitational manipulation devices." "Their space defenses?" Emperor Vexnari inquired. "Non-existent, Your Majesty. They have a few orbital platforms around their homeworld, but these are primarily for communication and observation. They possess no defensive satellites, no energy shields, no particle beam arrays. Their space-based military presence consists of a handful of patrol ships that could not challenge even our oldest scout vessels." Senator Brixitada, whose species had been conquered by the Empire 2 centuries earlier, raised a tentacle. "Do they show any unusual technological developments? Sometimes primitive species surprise us with unexpected innovations." Kexthul's mandibles clicked dismissively. "Nothing of note, Senator. They have developed primitive computers and basic nuclear technology. Their scientists work on theoretical physics, but their mathematics are too limited to achieve any breakthrough discoveries. They lack the fundamental understanding necessary for faster-than-light travel, energy shielding, or matter manipulation. The Emperor's scales shifted to deep red, indicating his decision-making mood. Admiral Zexkoth, how long would it take to subjugate this system? A massive alien covered in chitinous armor stood on one of the military platforms. His species resembled a cross between a crab and a spider, with multiple eyes arranged around his head. Your Majesty, I estimate no more than 72 hours for complete conquest. A single squadron would be sufficient. We could demand their surrender, and when they refuse, demonstrate our superiority by destroying one of their orbital facilities. They would capitulate immediately. And if they continue to resist, then we proceed with standard pacification protocols, Admiral Zexkoth replied. Eliminate their military assets, occupy their major population centers, and establish imperial rule. Total casualties should be minimal, as they lack any capability to damage our ships. Emperor Vexnari's scales turned bright yellow, showing his satisfaction. Excellent. However, the human system is not our immediate priority. We are currently engaged in the final stages of conquering the Rigel Confederation. Once that campaign concludes, we will add the Sol system to our expansion schedule. When do you estimate that will be, Your Majesty? Asked Senator Yixmol. 6 months, perhaps 8. The Rigel species possess actual military technology, unlike these humans. They require our full attention. But once they fall, we will demonstrate to the galaxy that even the most primitive species cannot escape imperial destiny. The assembled aliens burst into approving sounds. The Empire had conquered over 3,000 star systems during its long expansion across the galaxy. Each new victory reinforced their belief in their own superiority and the inevitability of their rule. Unknown to the Imperial Senate, their communications were being monitored by a small listening post hidden in the asteroid belt of a distant system. Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Deep Space Reconnaissance Corps sat in her cramped command center, surrounded by banks of monitoring equipment and translation computers. She had been tracking Imperial communications for over 2 years, slowly building a database of their language and technology. Her translation algorithms had finally achieved enough accuracy to understand their conversations in real time. As she listened to the Senate session, her blood grew cold. The Empire had found Earth. They were planning to conquer humanity, and they had no idea what they were about to face. Sarah activated her emergency communication array and began transmitting a coded message back toward Earth. The signal would take months to reach its destination, but it carried the most important intelligence in human history. The message was simple. They found us. They're coming. Activate Shadow Strike. Far away in the Imperial capital, Emperor Vexenari dismissed the Senate session with a wave of his massive clawed hand. In his mind, the fate of humanity was already decided. They would bow or burn, just like every other species that had faced the might of the Empire. He had no way of knowing that humanity had been preparing for this moment for over 30 years, and their preparations had gone far beyond anything the Empire could imagine. 6 months later, the Imperial 7th Scouting Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. 3 massive warships materialized in the empty space beyond Pluto, their hulls gleaming with energy shields that could deflect asteroids and solar radiation. Admiral Zexkoth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crushing Victory. His multiple eyes scanned the tactical displays that showed the primitive human solar system spread out before them. Each planet appeared on his screens with detailed information about its composition, gravity, and any signs of human activity. Status report, the Admiral commanded, his voice carrying the authority of a being who had conquered 17 star systems for the Empire. All ships operational, Admiral, replied his second-in-command, Captain Yulnex. Engines at standby, weapons powered but not armed, shields at maximum. No sign of human military response to our arrival. Admiral Zexkoth's mandibles clicked with amusement. Of course not. Their primitive sensors probably cannot even detect our presence at this distance. Communications. Open a channel to all human frequencies. Channel open. Admiral. Zexkoth straightened to his full height, activating the recording system that would broadcast his message throughout human space. His image would appear on every television, radio, computer, and communication device that humans possessed. Primitive species of the Sol system, he began. his translated voice carrying the weight of imperial authority. "I am Admiral Zexkoth of the Zephyrian Empire, commanding the 7th Scouting Fleet. Your system has been selected for incorporation into the Imperial domain." He paused, allowing his words to sink in across the human worlds. On Earth, Mars, Europa, and the scattered mining stations throughout the system, humans stopped their activities to stare at their screens in shock and disbelief. "You have 72 hours to surrender unconditionally," the Admiral continued. "Cease all military activities, power down your defensive systems, and prepare to receive Imperial occupation forces. Your species will be evaluated for its usefulness to the Empire. Those who cooperate will be allowed to live as servants. Those who resist will be eliminated." The transmission ended, leaving the human system in stunned silence. Admiral Zexkoth settled back into his command chair, expecting the usual responses he had seen from dozens of other primitive species: panic transmissions, desperate attempts at negotiation, or futile military preparations. But the humans did something unexpected. They remained completely silent. Hours passed without any response from Earth or the human colonies. No frantic communications. No military ships scrambling to defend their worlds. No diplomatic attempts to establish contact. The human system continued its normal activities as if nothing had happened. "Admiral," Captain Yulnex reported after 12 hours of silence, "we are detecting no change in human activity patterns. Their commercial ships continue normal operations. Their military vessels remain in standard patrol positions. No additional forces are being mobilized." Admiral Zexkoth's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps they did not understand our message." "Communications, repeat the transmission on all frequencies. Include visual demonstrations of our weaponry." The second broadcast showed footage of Imperial plasma cannons destroying asteroids and energy beams reducing metallic targets to glowing gas. The message was clear. This is what happens to those who resist the Empire. Still, the humans remained silent. 48 hours remaining, Admiral Zexkoth announced to his crew. "Perhaps these primitives are too stupid to understand their situation. Prepare to demonstrate Imperial power by destroying one of their outer colonies." On the bridge of the crushing victory, tactical officers began plotting firing solutions for the human mining station on Ceres. The facility housed nearly 50,000 humans and would make an excellent example of Imperial might. But Emperor Vexnari had other ideas. A quantum communication link activated on the Admiral's command console, and the massive form of the Emperor appeared as a hologram. "Admiral," the Emperor's voice boomed across the bridge, "I have been monitoring your progress. These humans intrigue me with their lack of response. I want to observe their reactions personally when you demonstrate our superiority." "Of course, Your Majesty. We are prepared to eliminate the mining facility on their largest asteroid." "No," the Emperor said, his scales shifting to the orange of anticipation. "Something larger. Destroy their colony on the red planet, the one they call Mars. It will be visible from their homeworld, ensuring maximum psychological impact." Admiral Zexkoth bowed his head. "As you command, Your Majesty." The Imperial fleet began moving toward Mars, their massive ships cutting through space at speeds that would have taken human vessels months to achieve. As they approached the inner system, their sensors began detecting more human activity. Orbital stations around Earth, mining operations in the asteroid belt, and the growing colony on Mars that housed nearly 2 million humans. "Target acquired," reported the weapons officer. "Mars colony is within optimal firing range. Shall I commence bombardment?" "Wait," Admiral Zexkoth ordered. "First, give them one final chance to surrender. Open a channel to the Mars colony specifically." The transmission reached the colony's communication center, where Director James Harrison received the call. A career diplomat who had been stationed on Mars for 15 years, Harrison listened calmly to the Admiral's ultimatum. "This is Director Harrison of New Shanghai Colony," he replied. "I acknowledge receipt of your message." Admiral Zexkoth leaned forward. "Finally a response from these strange humans. Do you speak for your entire species?" "No, Admiral. I speak only for the people of this colony. But I can tell you that we have heard your demands." "And your response?" Director Harrison was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried an odd note that the Admiral could not identify. It might have been sadness or perhaps pity. "Admiral, I want you to know that we understand what you believe you are doing here. We know that your empire has conquered many worlds, enslaved many species. We know that you believe humans are just another primitive civilization that will bow before your superior technology. Because you are, Admiral Zexkoth replied. Your primitive weapons cannot harm our ships. Your simple minds cannot comprehend our science. Submit now and your deaths will be quick. Admiral, Harrison said quietly, you should understand something about humanity. We have been preparing for this day for a very long time. We knew that eventually someone like you would find us, someone who believed that might makes right, that superior technology grants the right to dominate others. The Admiral's mandibles clicked with impatience. Enough philosophy. Surrender or die. I'm afraid we must decline your offer, Harrison replied. And Admiral? You really should have brought more ships. The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Zexkoth staring at his screen in confusion. More ships? His 3 heavy cruisers carried enough firepower to reduce entire planets to rubble. What could these primitives possibly do against the might of the Imperial Navy? Admiral? His sensor officer called out urgently. I am detecting unusual gravitational readings throughout the system. The patterns do not match any known natural phenomena. Explain. Unknown, sir. The readings appear to be artificial, but they do not match any technology in our databases. They seem to be emanating from empty space. Admiral Zexkoth felt the first stirring of unease. In all his campaigns against primitive species, none had ever displayed technology beyond his understanding. But these humans had remained strangely calm throughout his threats, and now his sensors were detecting impossible readings. Weapons, prepare to fire on the Mars colony, he ordered. If these humans want to die as martyrs, we will accommodate them. Weapons charging, Admiral. Plasma cannons will be ready to fire in 30 seconds. Emperor Vexnari's hologram flickered with excitement. Excellent, Admiral. Show these primitives the price of defying the Empire. But as the Imperial ships powered up their weapons and prepared to demonstrate their overwhelming superiority, none of them noticed the strange distortions beginning to form in the space around them. Reality itself seemed to be bending, preparing to reveal just how catastrophically the Empire had misjudged their latest target. The countdown reached 0, and Admiral Zexkoth opened his mouth to give the order to fire. But before he could speak, something impossible happened that would change the course of galactic history forever. The space above the Imperial fleet simply changed. One moment, Admiral Zexkoth was staring at empty vacuum dotted with distant stars. The next moment, a massive shape occupied the space directly above his 3 warships. No energy signature had warned of its arrival. No distortion in space-time had announced its approach. No faster-than-light wake had betrayed its movement. The ship was simply there, as if reality had been edited to include it. Report, Admiral Zexkoth roared, his multiple eyes struggling to process what his sensors were telling him. Admiral, his sensor officer stammered, I am reading a vessel 2.3 kilometers in length, but the readings make no sense. According to our instruments, it appeared without any form of propulsion or dimensional transfer. It simply materialized. The human ship hung in space above the Imperial fleet like a predator studying its prey. Its hull defied every principle of spacecraft design that the Empire had learned over 3 millennia of conquest. Instead of the angular armored surfaces of military vessels, the ship's exterior flowed in organic curves that seemed to bend light around them. Sections of the hull appeared to be made of some crystalline material that shifted color as Admiral Zexkoth watched. What manner of technology is this? He whispered. Emperor Vexnari's hologram flickered with static as the quantum communication link struggled to maintain coherence. Admiral, what is that ship? Our long-range sensors show nothing but empty space at your location. Your Majesty, there is a massive human vessel directly above our position. Our sensors detect it, but apparently yours cannot. I do not understand how this is possible. On the bridge of the TCS Retribution, Captain Marcus Webb stood calmly before his command console. The bridge bore no resemblance to the control rooms of conventional spaceships. Instead of metal panels and blinking lights, organic curves of what appeared to be living crystal grew throughout the space. Information flowed across translucent surfaces in patterns that resembled neural networks more than computer displays. Status report, Captain Webb requested. Dimensional anchor established, replied Commander Sarah Kim, his executive officer. We are fully materialized in local spacetime. Imperial vessels are directly below us, weapons charged but unable to achieve target lock. Understood. Open a communication channel. Captain Webb's image appeared on every screen aboard the 3 Imperial ships. He was a man in his mid-50s with graying hair and calm blue eyes that held no trace of fear or aggression. He wore a simple blue uniform with no obvious rank insignia. "Imperial vessels," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "You have threatened human territory and civilian populations. You have exactly 60 seconds to withdraw beyond the heliopause, or we will interpret your presence as an act of war." Admiral Zexkoth recovered from his shock quickly. Whatever technology these humans possessed, they were still vastly outnumbered. His 3 ships carried enough firepower to destroy planets. "Human vessel," he replied. "You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender immediately or we will destroy you." "I'm afraid that won't be possible," Captain Webb responded. "You have 55 seconds to begin your withdrawal." Emperor Vexnari's scales turned deep red with rage. "Admiral, destroy that ship immediately. I will not be threatened by primitives." "With pleasure, Your Majesty." Admiral Zexkoth turned to his weapons officer. "All ships target the human vessel. Fire everything we have." "Admiral, our targeting systems cannot lock onto the human ship. It registers on our sensors, but our weapons cannot acquire it as a target." "How is that possible?" "Unknown, sir. The ship appears to exist in our local space, but our computers cannot establish a firing solution. It is as if the vessel occupies a different dimensional layer." Admiral Zexkoth's frustration boiled over. "Then fire manually. Saturate the entire area with plasma fire." The 3 Imperial cruisers opened fire simultaneously. Plasma cannons that could melt through asteroid hulls discharged their energy in brilliant streams of superheated matter. Quantum torpedoes that could destroy city-sized targets streaked through space toward the human ship. Matter disintegrators that reduced molecular bonds to their component atoms swept across the area where the Retribution hung motionless. The barrage was devastating enough to reduce a small moon to cosmic dust. Any conventional ship would have been vaporized instantly. The Empire's weapons represented the pinnacle of 3,000 years of military development. Every shot stopped approximately 50 meters from the human ship's hull. Their plasma beam struck an invisible barrier and simply ceased to exist. The quantum torpedoes reached the same distance and vanished as if they had never been fired. The matter disintegrator beams contacted something that should not have been there and dispersed harmlessly into space, Admiral. Zexkoth stared in disbelief as his most powerful weapons proved completely ineffective. "What kind of shielding technology is this?" "Admiral," his science officer called out, "I am not detecting any energy shields around the human vessel. Whatever is stopping our weapons, it does not register on any of our instruments." Captain Webb's voice came through the communication system again, still perfectly calm. 30 seconds remaining. "Impossible," Emperor Vexnari snarled through the quantum link. "No technology can simply neutralize Imperial weapons. There must be some explanation." Admiral Zexkoth turned to his chief engineer. "Reroute all available power to the main plasma array. Overload the capacitors if necessary. I want maximum firepower concentrated on that ship." "Admiral, overloading the capacitors could damage our own systems." "Do it." The Imperial flagship's main plasma cannon began drawing power from every system on the ship. The lights dimmed as energy flowed to the massive weapon. When it fired, the beam was bright enough to be seen from Mars with the naked eye. The beam reached the invisible barrier around the human ship and stopped, its energy dissipating into nothingness. 15 seconds, Captain Webb announced. Admiral Zexkoth felt panic beginning to creep into his thoughts. His weapons could not touch the human ship, but they had made no aggressive moves in response. They simply hung in space waiting for his decision. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "the human ship is scanning us. I am detecting some form of energy probe examining our hull structure, power systems, and crew composition. Block the scans." "I cannot, sir. The scanning energy passes through our shields as if they do not exist." Captain Webb's final words came through the speakers. "Time is up, Admiral. You have chosen to interpret your presence here as an act of war." On the bridge of the Retribution, Commander Kim looked up from her console. "Captain, dimensional analysis of the Imperial vessels is complete. Their technology is based on conventional matter-energy manipulation. No dimensional awareness or quantum consciousness integration." "Understood," Captain Webb replied. "They pose no threat to us, but their presence here threatens human civilians. Eliminate the threat." "Which method shall I employ, Captain?" Captain Webb studied the tactical display for a moment. The 3 Imperial ships hung in space below them, their crews no doubt wondering how their superior technology had proven so useless against a single human vessel. Make it educational, he decided. Show them what they're really facing. Begin with the port cruiser. Dimensional compression. Commander Kim's hands moved across her console, but instead of pressing buttons, she seemed to be shaping the crystalline surface itself. Targeting the Imperial vessel Savage Truth. Dimensional compression field initializing. Admiral Zexkoth watched in horror as space around his portside escort began to behave strangely. The stars visible beyond the ship started to bend inward as if gravity was increasing around the vessel. But this was not gravity as the Empire understood it. The Savage Truth began to shrink. Not its hull crumpling under pressure, not its structure collapsing from damage. The entire ship, along with its crew of 3,000 beings, simply became smaller. The vessel contracted smoothly and uniformly, maintaining its shape as it compressed into an increasingly tiny point of matter. Within moments, one of the Empire's most advanced warships had been reduced to a sphere no larger than a marble. Then it shrank further, becoming a point of light. Then it vanished entirely, taking every trace of its existence with it. The communication link with Emperor Vexnari filled with static as the massive alien leader struggled to comprehend what he had witnessed. Admiral? The Emperor's voice crackled. Report your status immediately. Admiral Zexkoth could barely speak. Your Majesty, the Savage Truth is gone. The humans somehow compressed it out of existence. I have never seen anything like this technology. Captain Webb's calm voice returned to the Imperial communication system. Admiral, you now have 2 ships remaining. You may use them to carry a message back to your Emperor, or I can continue my demonstration. Your choice. Admiral Zexkoth looked at his remaining escort vessel, then at the impossible human ship hanging above them like a sword of judgment. For the first time in his long military career, he faced an enemy whose capabilities were so far beyond his understanding that resistance seemed meaningless. But he was an Imperial admiral, and he had never retreated from any battle. His pride and his duty to the Empire demanded that he fight to the end, even against an impossible enemy. All ships, he commanded, prepare for ramming speed. If we cannot destroy them with weapons, we the Imperial cruiser. Relentless conquest accelerated toward the human ship at ramming speed, its hull glowing from the friction of pushing through space debris at such velocity. Admiral Zexkoth watched from his flagship as his escort vessel charged the Retribution in a final desperate attack. Ramming speed achieved, reported the tactical officer aboard the Relentless Conquest. Impact in 15 seconds. Commander Kim looked up from her control console on the bridge of the Retribution. Captain, shall I prevent their approach? No, Captain Webb replied quietly. Let them come. They need to understand that physical force is as meaningless as energy weapons against us. The Imperial cruiser struck the invisible barrier around the human ship at full speed. The massive warship, weighing millions of tons and traveling at tremendous velocity, hit the barrier and stopped instantly. Not slowed, not deflected, but stopped as completely as if it had struck an immovable wall. The kinetic energy that should have been transferred into the collision simply vanished. The Imperial ship hung motionless against the barrier, its engines still firing uselessly, pushing against something that refused to yield. Admiral Zexkoth stared at the sight in disbelief. How is this possible? The kinetic energy alone should have what, Admiral? Captain Webb's voice interrupted his thoughts. Should have damaged our ship? Should have proven that brute force can overcome superior understanding? I'm afraid physics doesn't work that way. On the bridge of the Relentless Conquest, Captain Nexeville tried desperately to reverse engines and pull away from the human ship, but his vessel remained frozen against the invisible barrier, unable to move forward or backward. Admiral, he transmitted to the flagship, we are trapped against their defensive field. Our engines cannot break us free. Commander Kim turned to Captain Webb. Shall I release them, Captain? In a moment. First, let's show them something truly educational. Molecular reorganization, if you please. Kim's hands shaped the crystalline console again, her movements resembling those of a sculptor working with clay rather than a technician operating machinery. Targeting the Relentless Conquest, beginning molecular reorganization. The hull of the Imperial cruiser began to change color. The dark gray metal that had been forged in the shipyards of the Empire started shifting to a lighter shade. Then it began to glow with a soft, warm light. "What's happening to our hull?" Captain Nexville demanded of his engineering staff. "Unknown, sir," his chief engineer replied, his voice filled with panic. "The hull composition is changing at the molecular level. Our armor is being converted into—" "I don't understand these readings. According to our sensors, our ship is turning into hydrogen gas." The transformation spread across the cruiser like a slow wave. Metal bulkheads became clouds of glowing gas. Weapon systems dissolved into their component atoms. Life support equipment simply ceased to exist as organized matter. The crew of the Relentless Conquest had time to send one final transmission before the transformation reached their bridge. "Tell the Empire. Tell them we never stood a chance." Within minutes, the Imperial warship had been completely converted from organized matter into an expanding cloud of inert hydrogen. 3,000 more beings had ceased to exist, not killed by violence, but simply edited out of reality by a technology they could not comprehend. Admiral Zexkoth watched his second escort disappear and felt something he had never experienced in his long military career. True terror. These humans were not using weapons in any sense he understood. They were rewriting the fundamental laws of physics to achieve their desired outcomes. "Your Majesty," he transmitted to Emperor Vexnari, "I request immediate reinforcement. The human technology is beyond our ability to counter." But the quantum communication link was filled with static. The Emperor's image flickered and distorted as if something was interfering with the transmission. "Admiral," came the Emperor's broken voice. "You're breaking up. Cannot—" "What is—" The communication cut off entirely, leaving Admiral Zexkoth alone with his remaining ship against an enemy whose capabilities seemed limitless. Captain Webb's calm voice returned to the Imperial communication system. "Admiral, I apologize for interrupting your call. However, we cannot allow you to summon reinforcements. This demonstration is intended for your Empire's leadership, and we prefer to deliver our message personally." "What have you done?" Admiral Zexkoth demanded. "We have temporarily isolated your quantum communication array," Webb explained. "Your ship is now existing in a localized temporal bubble. From your perspective, time is passing normally. From the outside universe's perspective, you are frozen in a single moment. Your Emperor cannot send help because from his viewpoint, you ceased to exist several minutes ago." Admiral Zexkoth's science officer confirmed the impossible statement. "Admiral, our chronometers are functioning normally, but our external sensors show that the stars have stopped moving. We appear to be isolated from the normal flow of time. How is this possible?" the Admiral whispered. Captain Webb appeared on the main screen of the Imperial flagship, his expression serious but not unkind. "Admiral, your species has spent 3,000 years conquering other civilizations through superior firepower. You have never encountered a species that approached the universe differently than you do." "Different how?" "You see the universe as a collection of objects to be moved, destroyed, or controlled through the application of force. You have built magnificent weapons and powerful ships, all designed to impose your will through violence. It is an impressive achievement in its way." Admiral Zexkoth said nothing, waiting for the human to continue. "But you have never asked the fundamental question, what if the universe itself could be convinced to cooperate? What if matter and energy and space and time were not obstacles to overcome, but partners to work with?" "That is impossible. The laws of physics are fixed," Captain Webb smiled sadly. "Admiral, the laws of physics are suggestions. Very strong suggestions, but still just suggestions. When you understand the universe deeply enough, you can have a conversation with reality itself. You can ask space to move your ship instead of pushing through it. You can request time to slow down or speed up. You can suggest to matter that it might prefer to be organized differently. That is not science. That is magic. Any technology sufficiently advanced appears to be magic to those who do not understand it," Webb replied. "But I assure you, there is nothing supernatural about our capabilities. We simply learn to work with the universe instead of fighting against it." Admiral Zexkoth looked around his bridge at his crew, all of whom were staring at the human captain with a mixture of fear and awe. His weapons officer spoke up hesitantly. "Admiral, if their technology is so advanced, why haven't they conquered the galaxy themselves?" Captain Webb heard the question and answered it. "Because conquest was never our goal. We spent centuries learning that the universe is vast enough for all of us. There is no need to take resources from others when you can simply ask reality to provide what you need. Then why are you here?" Admiral Zexkoth asked. Because your empire has caused immense suffering throughout the galaxy. Billions of beings have died or been enslaved for the crime of existing in systems you decided to conquer. We have been watching and learning and preparing for the day when we would need to intervene. You could have revealed yourselves earlier, warned us away from your territory. Admiral, if we had appeared 50 years ago, your empire would have prepared for our arrival. You would have developed countermeasures, rallied your forces, perhaps even found ways to defeat us. By waiting until now, until you came to us with contempt and overconfidence, we ensured that you would face us with your weaknesses exposed. Admiral Zexkoth began to understand the true scope of what he faced. You planned this entire encounter. We planned for many possible encounters, Webb confirmed. We studied your empire's methods, your psychology, your technology. We knew that eventually, someone like you would find Earth and assume we were helpless primitives. We were ready. The Admiral felt his remaining pride crumble. What do you want from us? We want your empire to stop, Captain Webb said simply. Stop conquering. Stop enslaving. Stop treating other species as objects to be possessed. The galaxy is large enough for everyone to live in peace. The Empire will never agree to such terms. Then the Empire will cease to exist. Webb replied, his voice still calm but carrying an undertone of absolute certainty. We have already begun editing Imperial outposts out of reality. Your border worlds are being convinced that they never belonged to your empire in the first place. Your conquered species are being reminded of their independence. Admiral Zexkoth's face went pale. You're destroying our entire civilization. No, Admiral. We are correcting it. We are returning the galaxy to the state it should have been in if your empire had never chosen conquest as its path. The choice of what happens next belongs to your emperor. Captain Webb's image faded from the screen, but his voice remained. We are going to release you from the temporal isolation now. You will carry our message to your emperor. Tell him that humanity is prepared to negotiate the peaceful dissolution of his empire, or we will continue our corrections until the hour. Emperor Vexnari's throne room fell silent as Admiral Zexkoth finished his report. The massive alien ruler sat motionless on his floating platform, his scales cycling through colors that had no name in any language. Around the vast chamber, the Emperor's advisors and generals stood in shocked silence. You are telling me, the Emperor said slowly, that a single human ship destroyed 2 of our most advanced cruisers without using any recognizable weapons technology. Yes, Your Majesty. They manipulated space and matter itself as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions they could choose to ignore. General Caxthor, the Empire's supreme military commander, stepped forward. His battle-scarred exoskeleton clinked as he moved. Your Majesty, this is impossible. No species possesses such technology. The Admiral must have encountered some kind of illusion or deception. I saw my ship cease to exist, Admiral Zexkoth replied firmly. 3,000 of our finest warriors were edited out of reality, as if they had never been born. This was no illusion. Emperor Vexnari's scales turned deep purple, the color of deep thought mixed with growing fear. For 3 millennia, the Empire had expanded across the galaxy through overwhelming military superiority. They had conquered species that possessed advanced energy weapons, sophisticated defensive systems, and powerful space fleets. But they had never encountered anything like what the Admiral described. What are their demands? The Emperor asked. They want us to release all conquered territories and submit to oversight by the species we have enslaved. They call it the peaceful dissolution of the Empire. And if we refuse? Admiral Zexkoth's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. They said they would continue their corrections until the Empire exists only as a historical footnote. General Caxthor's mandibles clicked with aggressive dismissal. Your Majesty, we cannot capitulate to threats from a single ship, no matter how advanced their technology appears to be. The Empire has 1 million vessels across 1,000 star systems. Even if this human ship is as powerful as the Admiral claims, they cannot be everywhere at once. Emperor Vexnari was about to respond when his chief of communications rushed into the throne room, his multiple legs skittering across the polished floor in obvious panic. Your Majesty, the communications officer gasped. We are receiving reports from across the Empire. Something impossible is happening. Explain. The border fortress at Rigel 7. It's gone, Your Majesty. Not destroyed, not captured. According to all our records, it never existed. The star charts show empty space where our military base should be. General Caxthor stepped forward. That is impossible. I personally oversaw the construction of that fortress 15 years ago. Sir, our computer records show that you oversaw the construction of a fortress, but the location data now points to empty space. It's as if reality has been edited to remove any trace of our presence there. Emperor Vexenari's scales flickered between purple and red. Continue your report. The slave colonies at Wolf 359 are transmitting independence declarations, Your Majesty. But here's the strange part. They claim they were never conquered by us. Their historical records show that they have been free for the past 2 centuries. How many worlds are affected? The count is rising by the hour, Your Majesty. So far, 17 border systems have either vanished from our records or reverted to their pre-conquest states. The affected worlds show no knowledge of ever being part of the Empire. Admiral Zexkoth looked at the Emperor with grim understanding. Your Majesty, the humans warned me this was already happening. They are not just threatening us. They are actively editing our empire out of existence. The throne room erupted in chaos as generals, advisors, and bureaucrats all began speaking at once. Some demanded immediate military action, others suggested negotiation, and a few recommended fleeing to the outer rim territories beyond human reach. Emperor Vexenari raised one massive clawed hand, and silence returned instantly. How is this possible? How can they change historical records across multiple star systems simultaneously? Admiral Zexkoth activated his personal datapad and displayed the recordings he had made of the human ship. Your Majesty, I believe they are not changing records. They are changing reality itself. According to the human captain, they have learned to work with the fundamental forces of the universe rather than fighting against them. Magic, General Caxthor sneered. You are describing magic, not technology. Call it whatever you wish, the Admiral replied. The result is the same. Our empire is being systematically dismantled by forces we cannot understand or counter. The communications officer cleared his throat nervously. Your Majesty, there is more. We are receiving a transmission from the human vessel. They are requesting permission to establish a direct communication link with you. Absolutely not, General Caxthor snapped. We will not negotiate with terrorists. But Emperor Vexenari was studying the tactical displays that showed the spreading zones where Imperial control was simply ceasing to exist. Already, nearly 50 star systems had either vanished from Imperial records or declared independence with no memory of ever being conquered. Establish the link, the Emperor commanded. Captain Webb's image appeared as a hologram in the center of the throne room. His calm demeanor and simple uniform presented a stark contrast to the massive, ornate chamber filled with alien nobility and military leaders. Your Imperial Majesty, Webb said with a respectful nod. I am Captain Marcus Webb of the Terran Strategic Command. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me. Emperor Vexenari leaned forward on his throne. Human, you are dismantling an empire that has existed for 3,000 years. Do you have any concept of the chaos you are creating? Yes, Your Majesty, I do. But I would respectfully suggest that the chaos already existed. Your empire was built on the suffering of billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. We are simply returning the galaxy to a more natural state. Natural according to whom? Captain Webb's expression remained patient. According to the species you conquered, Your Majesty. We have been in contact with representatives from over 200 worlds that were forcibly incorporated into your empire. They have universally expressed their desire for independence. General Caxthor stepped into view of the holographic projector. And what gives you the right to speak for them? What makes humanity the judge of galactic civilization? Nothing gives us that right, Webb replied. We took it upon ourselves because no one else was able to stop the suffering your empire was causing. For too long, the strong have preyed upon the weak simply because they could. We represent an alternative. Emperor Vexenari's scales shifted to deep red. And if we refuse to accept your alternative, then we will continue our corrections until every conquered world has been restored to independence. Your military forces will find their weapons and ships edited out of existence. Your administrative centers will be convinced that they never held authority over foreign worlds. Eventually, your empire will consist of only those worlds that voluntarily choose to remain associated with your government. You are talking about the destruction of everything we have built. Captain Webb shook his head. No, Your Majesty. We are talking about the liberation of everything you have taken. Your core worlds, your original civilization, your people. None of that needs to be harmed. We are not interested in conquest or revenge. We simply want the oppression to end. The Emperor was quiet for a long moment, his scales cycling through colors as he processed the situation. Around him, his advisors waited for his decision, knowing that the next words he spoke would determine the fate of their civilization. What assurance do we have that you will honor your agreements? He finally asked. The same assurance your conquered species had when they surrendered to your forces, Webb replied gently. Our word, backed by our demonstrated capability to enforce it. Emperor Vexenari looked around his throne room at the faces of his generals and advisors. He saw fear there, and confusion, but also something he had never seen before in their expressions. Doubt. For the first time in imperial history, his subordinates were questioning whether the Empire's path was the correct one. How long do we have to decide? The Emperor asked. The corrections are continuing as we speak, Your Majesty. Every hour you delay, more of your empire ceases to exist. I would suggest that a prompt decision would be in everyone's best interest. The communication ended, leaving the throne room in heavy silence. Emperor Vexenari sat alone with his thoughts, watching the tactical displays that showed his empire shrinking by the hour. General Caxthor broke the silence. Your Majesty, we could withdraw all our forces to the core systems and make a final stand. Force them to destroy us rather than accept their terms. And accomplish what? The Emperor asked wearily. They have already demonstrated that our weapons cannot harm them. They could edit our core worlds out of existence as easily as they have eliminated our border territories. Then what do you propose? Emperor Vexenari stood slowly from his throne, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. For 3,000 years, his ancestors had ruled the greatest empire in galactic history. Now, in a single day, he was being asked to voluntarily dissolve everything they had built. But as he watched another dozen systems disappear from the imperial star charts,